My name is Emily Carter, and I'm 32 years old. I live in Seattle, Washington in a cozy one-bedroom condo I bought myself 3 years ago. A milestone I was proud of, though it barely registered as a blip on my family's radar. By day, I'm a project manager at a mid-sized tech company downtown, wrangling million-dollar budgets and impossible deadlines with a team of 20. I love my job, even if it means late nights and the occasional weekend spent glued to my laptop. I've worked hard for every promotion, every raise, every ounce of respect I've earned in the office. But at home, none of that seems to matter. I'm the oldest of 3 siblings, the one who was supposed to set the example. My parents, both retired teachers, raised us with high expectations: work hard, get good grades, make something of yourself. For a while I thought I was doing just that. I graduated top of my class at the University of Washington, landed a job straight out of college, and paid off my $38,000 student loan by the time I was 30. But somewhere along the way the goalposts shifted. My younger brother Jake is the family's golden child. He's 30, married to his college sweetheart, and has 2 adorable kids who dominate every family conversation. He works at a flashy tech startup, and my parents love to brag about his brilliant career and beautiful family. My little sister Megan is 26, still figuring things out, but she's got a steady boyfriend and a knack for making everyone laugh. Compared to them, I'm the odd one out, the single career-focused sister who never quite fits the mold. Family gatherings are the worst. Every Thanksgiving, Christmas, or random Sunday dinner, my relationship status becomes the main course. "Emily, maybe next year you'll bring someone home," my dad will say, grinning as if he's the first to make the joke. My mom chimes in with, "Don't worry, honey, there's always Tinder." Jake, never one to miss an opportunity, adds, "At least you have your cat, right?" The table erupts in laughter, and I force a smile, pretending it doesn't sting. But it does every single time. It's not that my family is cruel. They love me in their own way. But there's an unspoken hierarchy at the table, and being single puts me at the bottom. My achievements, buying my own place, earning a 6-figure salary, leading a team of 20, are politely acknowledged, then quickly overshadowed by stories of Jake's latest promotion or Megan's new boyfriend. Sometimes I wonder if they even know what I do for a living. When I tried to explain my last big project, a $2.5 million software rollout, my dad nodded and asked if I'd met anyone interesting at work. There's a constant, subtle pressure to catch up, as if happiness is measured by rings on your finger or the number of kids you have. My mom drops hints about her friends' daughters getting married, and my grandma never misses a chance to remind me that time is ticking. Even my friends, well-meaning as they are, ask if I'm putting myself out there. It's exhausting, always feeling like I have to justify my choices, to prove that I'm enough just as I am. Sometimes late at night I wonder what it would feel like to be seen for who I am, not who I'm not. To have my family celebrate my successes, not just my relationship status. But for now I play my part, the responsible, reliable, perpetually single sister, hoping that one day things might change. The breaking point didn't come at a random family dinner, but at Jake's wedding. A day that was supposed to be about love and new beginnings, but for me, became a lesson in humiliation and betrayal. Jake's wedding was a grand affair, the kind you see in glossy magazines. The guest list was over 200 people. The venue, a historic mansion overlooking Lake Washington, with a rental fee of $12,000 for the night. My parents were beaming, proud to host such a lavish event for their only son. I'd spent weeks helping with the planning, coordinating vendors, managing RSVPs, even negotiating a $1,500 discount with the florist. I thought I was part of the inner circle, that my efforts mattered. A week before the wedding, Jake called me. "Hey Em, can you do me a huge favor?" he asked, his voice casual. "We're a little short on the open bar budget. Could you spot us $2,000? I'll pay you back right after the honeymoon." I hesitated, but he sounded desperate and I wanted to help. I transferred the money that night, telling myself it was what family did. The day of the wedding arrived, and I put on my best navy dress, the one I'd bought for $180 just for the occasion. I arrived early, ready to help with last-minute details. But as the guests began to arrive, I noticed something odd. My name was missing from the seating chart at the main family table. Instead, I was assigned to table 14, tucked away in the corner with distant cousins and a few of Jake's college friends I barely knew. I tried to brush it off, but it stung. When I asked Jake about it, he shrugged. We had to make room for Sarah's family. You understand, right? You'll have more fun with the younger crowd anyway. His fiancée, Sarah, barely looked at me. She was busy posing for photos, her diamond earrings catching the light. The ceremony was beautiful, and I did my best to smile through it. But at the reception, things went from bad to worse. During the speeches, Sarah's maid of honor gushed about how Jake and Sarah are the perfect couple, surrounded by so many loving friends and family. She thanked everyone at the main table by name. My parents, Sarah's siblings, even Jake's college roommate, but skipped right over me. Then came the real blow. As the cake was being cut, Sarah approached me, her voice low but sharp. Emily, I hope you don't mind, but we gave your +1 spot to my cousin. We just didn't think you'd need it. She smiled, but her eyes were cold. You're always so independent, right? I felt my face flush, my heart pounding in my chest. I wanted to disappear. I glanced at the gift table where my envelope, containing a $500 check, sat among the others. I wondered if anyone would even notice it was from me. Later, as the dance floor filled, I slipped outside for some air. I could hear laughter and music drifting through the open windows. My phone buzzed, a text from Jake. Thanks again for the bar money. You're a lifesaver. No mention of the seating, the +1, or the way I'd been sidelined all night. I stood there, shivering in the cool night air, replaying the day in my mind. I'd given my time, my money, my energy, only to be treated like an afterthought. I thought about the $2,000 I'd loaned, the $500 gift, the hours spent planning and organizing. I thought about the empty seat at the family table, the way Sarah had looked at me like I was an inconvenience. For the first time, I realized just how invisible I was to them. Not just overlooked, but actively pushed aside. I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and something else, resolve. I wiped away a tear, straightened my dress, and walked back inside, determined not to let them see me break. But inside, something had shifted. The hurt ran deep, and I knew things could never go back to the way they were. I left the wedding before the last dance, long before the sparklers and the send-off photos. I told my parents I had an early meeting the next morning, but the truth was I couldn't stand another minute of pretending. My smile felt brittle, my laughter hollow. As I slipped out the side door, the sounds of celebration faded behind me, replaced by the dull ache in my chest. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel, fighting back tears. The humiliation was raw, a burning knot in my stomach. I replayed every moment. The missing seat at the family table, Sarah's icy words, the way Jake had brushed me off as if I were just another guest, not his sister. I thought about the $2,000 I'd loaned them, the $500 check in the gift box, the hours I'd spent helping with the wedding, and how none of it seemed to matter. I was invisible, useful only when they needed something, otherwise forgotten. As I stared out at the parking lot, I remembered other times I'd been pushed aside. The Christmas when Jake got a new car and my parents made a big show of it, while my promotion to project manager was barely mentioned. The family vacation to Hawaii 2 years ago, when I paid for the rental car and half the groceries, but Jake's family got the master suite and I ended up on the pull-out couch. The countless dinners where my relationship status was a punchline, my career an afterthought. Why do I keep doing this? I wondered. Why do I keep giving, keep showing up when it's never enough? I thought about the years I'd spent trying to earn their approval, believing that if I just worked harder, achieved more, they'd finally see me. But tonight made it clear. Nothing I did would ever be enough, not as long as I was single, not as long as I didn't fit their idea of success. A wave of anger washed over me, mingling with the sadness. I was tired of being the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who always picked up the slack. Tired of being expected to help, to give, to sacrifice, without ever being truly seen or appreciated. I thought about the money I'd loaned Jake, the way he'd texted me like it was nothing, as if I were his personal ATM. I thought about Sarah's smug smile, her assumption that I wouldn't need a +1, that I was destined to be alone. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through Jake's messages. There were dozens, requests for help, reminders about deadlines, casual jokes at my expense. I stared at the most recent one. Thanks again for the bar money. You're a lifesaver. No apology, no acknowledgement of how I'd been treated. Just another transaction. Something inside me snapped. I opened our group chat, me, Jake, and Megan, and typed, I'm glad the wedding went well. I'll need the $2,000 back by the end of the month as we agreed. I hesitated, then added, and for future reference, I won't be able to help out financially anymore. I hope you understand. My hand shook as I hit send, but I felt a strange sense of relief, as if a weight had lifted from my shoulders. I ignored Jake's reply. Whoa, what's the rush? We just got back from the honeymoon. And turned off my phone. I didn't want to hear his excuses, didn't want to listen to my mom's inevitable call, telling me to let it go, or not make a scene. For once I needed space. I needed to put myself first. The days that followed were a blur of exhaustion and self-doubt. I went through the motions at work, but my mind kept drifting back to the wedding, to the look on Sarah's face, to the empty seat at the family table. I wondered if I was overreacting, if I was being selfish or petty. Maybe this was just how families were, messy, imperfect, sometimes hurtful. But deep down I knew it was more than that. It was a pattern, one I'd allowed to continue for years. I thought about all the times I'd put my family's needs above my own. The late-night phone calls, the last-minute favors, the financial bailouts. I remembered the time Megan needed help with her rent, and I wired her $800 without hesitation. The time my parents' furnace broke in the middle of winter, and I covered the $1,200 repair bill. I never expected anything in return, just a little gratitude, a little recognition. But it never came. I started to question everything. Why was I so desperate for their approval? Why did I let their opinions define my worth? I'd built a good life for myself, a career I loved, a home I was proud of, friends who valued me for who I was. Why wasn't that enough? The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. Not just at my family, but at myself. I'd let them take me for granted, let them make me feel small. I'd laughed off their jokes, swallowed my hurt, convinced myself that things would get better if I just tried harder. But nothing changed, and I was the one left feeling empty. For the first time, I considered skipping the next family event altogether. The thought was both terrifying and liberating. What would happen if I stopped showing up? Would they even notice? Would they care? Or would they just find someone else to fill my role, the dependable, invisible sister? I spent a lot of time alone that week, walking around Green Lake, letting the rain soak through my jacket. I replayed conversations in my head. Imagined what I would say if I had the courage. I'm not your safety net, I'd tell Jake. I'm not your punchline, I'd say at the dinner table. I deserved to be seen. But when the time came, I said nothing. I let my silence speak for me. I stopped answering Jake's texts, ignored my mom's attempts to smooth things over. I needed time to heal, to figure out what I wanted, what I was willing to accept. I owed it to myself to set boundaries, to protect my heart. The guilt lingered, a familiar ache. I loved my family despite everything. I wanted to be there for them, to share in their joys and sorrows. But I couldn't keep sacrificing my own happiness for theirs. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was okay. As the days turned into weeks, the pain began to fade, replaced by a quiet determination. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing. I was done being invisible. I was done letting others define my worth. For the first time in a long time, I started to imagine a life where I put myself first, a life where I was enough just as I was. Climax. The unexpected twist. The invitation arrived via group text 2 months after the wedding debacle. Family dinner this Sunday. Mom's making pot roast. Be there by 6 p.m. Jake's message included a winking emoji, as if we were all still one big happy family. I stared at my phone, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. For weeks, I'd ignored their calls and texts, but this felt different. This felt like a test. That's when Olivia Grant walked into my office. I'd met her 3 days earlier at a tech summit in San Francisco. As the keynote speaker, she'd commanded the stage with a mix of sharp wit and disarming warmth, traits I hadn't expected from the CEO of one of Seattle's fastest-growing AI startups. When I introduced myself during the networking break, I'd been shocked to learn she knew my name. "Your brother talks about you sometimes," she'd said, sipping her sparkling water, "though I'm starting to think he left out the most interesting parts." Now here she was, standing in my Seattle office doorway in a tailored blazer and jeans, holding 2 hiking trail maps. "I'm hijacking your lunch break," she announced. "You mentioned you loved Discovery Park. I need a local guide." Over turkey sandwiches at a picnic table overlooking Puget Sound, We bonded over our mutual disdain for small talk and our shared love of 90s indie films. When I casually mentioned my family's upcoming dinner, she smirked. Let me guess, they'll ask why you're still single. And you'll laugh it off while dying inside? More like they'll make bets on how many cats I'll own by 40, I said, crumbling a chip. She leaned back, studying me. What if you showed up with someone who'd make them rethink every judgment they've ever made about you? I laughed. You offering? Why not? She shrugged. I've always wanted to crash a family drama. Consider it professional curiosity. I've heard Jake's work stories for years. Time to meet the characters. On Sunday at 5:58 p.m., I stood outside my parents' craftsman-style home, Olivia's hand warm in mine. She wore a simple emerald green dress that made her look both approachable and authoritative. Her auburn hair swept into a loose twist. Last chance to bail, I whispered. She squeezed my fingers. Trust me, Em. This'll be fun. The moment we stepped inside, the usual cacophony of family noise stuttered to a halt. My mom froze mid-sentence, a serving spoon dangling from her hand. Jake, who'd been refilling wine glasses, nearly dropped the bottle. Even Megan's toddler stopped banging his sippy cup to stare. Everyone, this is Olivia, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Olivia, meet the family. Jake recovered first. Miss Grant? What, I mean how? His face flushed tomato red as he scrambled to set down the wine. Olivia extended her hand. Please call me Olivia. Emily's told me so much about you all. Her smile was warm, but there was a glint in her eye that reminded me of a chess player advancing a pawn. Dinner was a surreal mix of tension and forced normalcy. Mom kept shooting me wide-eyed glances while piling extra garlic bread onto Olivia's plate. Dad launched into his usual interrogation, but with uncharacteristic politeness. So, Olivia, how did you and Emily meet? Through work, she said smoothly, dabbing her mouth with a napkin. I've been trying to poach her from my executive team all month. Your daughter's the most talented project manager in the city. Jake choked on his Cabernet. You're recruiting Emily? Trying to. Olivia sighed dramatically. But she's loyal to her current company. Though I did convince her to consult on our new $15 million venture. She turned to me, playing her part flawlessly. Those scalability models you drafted? Pure genius. The table went silent. I watched the numbers register in Jake's eyes. $15 million was triple his biggest project budget. Megan broke the silence first. Wait, Em's working with your company? The one Jake's always talking about. Not just working with us, Olivia corrected. She's essentially co-leading the initiative. We're presenting to investors next week. She reached under the table and squeezed my knee. A silent "you've got this." Then came the moment I'll replay in my mind forever. As Mom brought out dessert, a store-bought cheesecake, her hands shaking slightly, Olivia turned to Jake. By the way, your analysis on last quarter's client retention was stellar. We're implementing your suggestions company-wide. Jake's fork clattered against his plate. You read my report? Of course. I read everything from my directors. She tilted her head. Didn't Emily mention I'd be joining tonight? I've been looking forward to meeting the man who... Who what? Megan leaned forward, sensing blood in the water. Olivia's smile turned razor-sharp. Who told our HR team last year that Emily was just his sister helping with resume tips when she restructured his entire department workflow. She sipped her wine. Funny how life circles back, isn't it? The air left the room. Jake looked like he'd been slapped. Mom dropped the cheesecake server. Even the toddler seemed to sense the shift, letting out a nervous giggle. I finally found my voice. You used my strategies? The ones I stayed up till 2 a.m. helping you draft. Olivia answered for him, her tone light but lethal. Oh yes. He presented them as his own. One innovation of the quarter for it, if I recall. The truth landed like a detonated bomb. Jake's face cycled through panic, shame and fury. Dad pushed away his plate, appetite gone. Megan gaped like a fish. It was Mom who broke first. Jake? Is this true? Before he could answer, Olivia stood, smoothing her dress. I think I've overstayed my welcome. Emily, walk me out. On the porch, the autumn air crisp against our heated faces. Olivia let out a breath. Too much. I stared at her, torn between horror and giddy triumph. You nuked my family dinner. Correction, we nuked it. She grinned. Though you might want to check Jake's contract. The non-disclosure he signed doesn't cover stealing credit from family members. A laugh burst out of me, sharp, unsteady, cathartic. For the first time in years I felt seen. Not as the spinster sister, not as the family ATM, but as someone powerful. Someone who mattered. Through the window I saw Jake pacing the living room, hands raking through his hair, while Megan gestured wildly. Mom sat slumped at the table, Dad's hand on her shoulder. The familiar ache of guilt tried to surface, but Olivia's voice cut through it. They'll respect you now. Or they'll regret it. As her taillights disappeared down the street, I realized the scales had finally tipped. The invisible sister had become the gravity holding everyone in orbit. And for once I held the power to decide who stayed in that orbit, and who floated away. 5. Confrontation and setting boundaries. The kitchen felt smaller than I remembered. The air thick with the scent of burned garlic bread and unspoken accusations. Jake shut the sliding door behind him with a sharp click, cutting us off from the muffled voices in the dining room. His face was still flushed, a vein pulsing at his temple. "What the hell, Em?" he hissed, jabbing a finger toward the window where Olivia's car had disappeared. "You brought my boss here? To humiliate me in front of everyone." I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. The familiar urge to apologize bubbled up, but I smothered it. "No, Jake. I brought someone who respects me. Maybe you should try it sometime." He barked, a laugh high and brittle. "Respect? You think that little stunt was about respect? You just torpedoed my career." "Your career?" I straightened, my voice cold. "Funny. I didn't realize your career depended on stealing my work and pretending it was yours." His eyes flickered, guilt flashing before defiance took over. "I never stole anything. You offered to help." "Help?" The word came out sharper than I intended. "I spent 3 nights fixing your department's workflow because you were drowning. I didn't charge you a dime. And you turned around, slapped your name on it, and took all the credit. You didn't even mention me in your damn report." He opened his mouth, but I cut him off. "And let's talk about the $2,000 loan for your wedding bar. Or the $500 check I left on the gift table you didn't even notice. Or the fact that you stuck me at table 14 with your frat buddies while Sarah's third cousins got the family seats." Jake's jaw tightened. "You're really keeping score now? That's pathetic." "No," I said quietly. "What's pathetic is needing your big sister to bail you out every time you screw up, then treating her like a joke at the dinner table." The door slid open. Megan hovered in the doorway, her phone clutched in one hand. Mom says dessert's getting cold." "Not now, Meg," Jake snapped. But Megan stepped inside, shutting the door behind her. Her usual smirk was gone. "Did you really take credit for Em's work?" Jake threw up his hands. "Oh, not you too. She's being dramatic." "The retention strategy Olivia mentioned," I interrupted. "The one that won you Innovation of the Quarter. Remember the flowcharts I made you at 2 a.m.? The client surveys I designed?" Megan's eyes widened. "The ones you said were group projects?" The silence that followed was answer enough. Jake turned to me, desperation creeping into his voice. "Look, I'm sorry, okay? I'll talk to HR, fix the credit thing. But you can't just explode our family over some work drama." "Work drama?" I laughed, the sound hollow. "This isn't about work, Jake. It's about you never seeing me as your equal. Not when I paid off Mom and Dad's $1,200 furnace bill. Not when I covered Megan's rent that time she got scammed. Not even when I bought this house." I gestured to the kitchen walls. "You joked about me playing grown-up with my little condo." Mom's voice drifted through the door. "Kids? Everything okay in there?" Jake ignored her, his anger deflating into something smaller, uglier. "So what? You want a trophy for being responsible? You want us to bow down to Saint Emily?" "No," my throat tightened. "I want you to stop treating me like I'm invisible until you need something. I want to come to dinner without being the punchline. My voice broke. "I want to matter as much as you do." The admission hung in the air, raw and fragile. Megan looked down at her shoes. Jake stared at the floor, his shoulders slumped. Finally, he muttered, "You're making this way bigger than it needs to be." Something inside me snapped. "Then let's make it simple. No more loans. No more favors. No more jokes about my dating life. You want my help? Ask. Respectfully. And mean it. He scoffed. Or what? You'll run to Olivia again. No, I met his gaze. I just won't show up. The words landed like a verdict. Megan inhaled sharply. Jake opened his mouth, then closed it, the fight draining out of him. I pushed past them, pausing at the door. The next family dinner? I'll come if and only if I'm treated like a person, not a prop. Your choice. In the dining room, Mom stood frozen by the cheesecake, her eyes red-rimmed. Dad hadn't touched his plate. Emily, please, Mom whispered. Stay. Let's talk this through. I shook my head, grabbing my coat from the hall closet. I've been talking for years, Mom. You just weren't listening. Dad stood abruptly, his chair scraping the floor. This isn't how family behaves. I turned, hand on the doorknob. You're right. Family doesn't steal from each other, or mock each other, or take each other for granted. My voice softened. I love you, but I love myself enough to walk away now. The porch light flickered as I stepped outside. Behind me, no one followed. Epilogue. The unspoken shift. 3 days later, an envelope arrived at my condo. Inside, a $2,000 check from Jake, the memo line blank. No note. Mom called that night, her voice tentative. Your father and I. We didn't realize how much we'd like to take you to lunch. Just us. If you're free. Megan texted a week later. FY, Jake's been insufferable since you left. Also, T-checks for paying my rent that time. Sorry I never said it. I haven't answered yet. The door's open. But I'm done knocking. Question to readers. When did you realize your worth wasn't negotiable? How did you rewrite the rules? Open ending and message. I left that night with Olivia. The cool Seattle air brushing against my skin, feeling lighter than I had in years. There was no dramatic music, no slow-motion walk into the sunset. Just the quiet, steady beat of my own heart, finally unburdened. Olivia squeezed my hand as we walked to her car, her presence a silent affirmation that I wasn't alone, not really. I had myself, and for the first time that felt like enough. As we drove through the city lights, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my mom. Proud of you tonight. Maybe we all needed a wake-up call. I stared at the screen, unsure whether to laugh or cry. Maybe it was true. Maybe we all needed to be shaken out of our old patterns, to see each other with new eyes. Or maybe for the first time I was simply seeing myself clearly. The days that followed were quieter than I expected. There were no grand apologies, no sudden outpouring of affection from my family. Jake sent the check for the money he owed me, no note attached. Megan texted a simple "Love you, Em." And Mom called to ask if I wanted to come over for coffee. Just the two of us. I said yes, but on my terms, and for once that felt like a choice, not an obligation. I started to notice the small freedoms that came with letting go of their approval. I spent Saturday mornings hiking with Olivia, or curled up with a book in my sunlit living room, not worrying about what anyone thought. I stopped checking my phone for validation, stopped rehearsing conversations in my head. I even started saying no more often, no to extra work, no to last-minute favors, no to being the family's emotional safety net. It wasn't easy. There were moments when guilt crept in, when I wondered if I was being selfish or ungrateful. But then I'd remember the years I spent bending over backward, the times I swallowed my hurt just to keep the peace. I realized that setting boundaries wasn't about shutting people out. It was about making space for myself, for my own needs and dreams. I also learned that forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation. I could forgive Jake for his thoughtlessness, my parents for their blind spots, even myself for staying silent so long. But forgiveness didn't mean going back to the way things were. It meant moving forward, with or without their understanding. Sometimes I still catch myself wishing things were different, that my family would really see me for who I am. But then I remember, I see myself now. I know my worth, and I don't need anyone else to validate it. I think about all the people out there who are still waiting for permission to live their own lives, who are still shrinking themselves to fit someone else's expectations. I want to tell them, you don't have to wait. You can choose yourself right now, in this moment. You can draw your own lines, define your own value, and build a life that feels true to you. So I'll leave you with this. How many of us spend our lives chasing approval that never comes, or bending ourselves into shapes that don't fit? When is it time to stop asking for permission and start living for ourselves? What would it look like if you put yourself first, not out of selfishness but out of self-respect? I'd love to hear your stories. When did you finally stand up for your own value? What boundaries have you set and how did it change your life? Do you believe forgiveness is possible without forgetting? Or that love can exist alongside distance? Maybe we're all just trying to find our place at the table, hoping to be seen and heard for who we really are. Maybe the bravest thing we can do is pull up our own chair, even if no one else makes room. So what about you? When did you decide your worth was not up for negotiation? And what would your life look like if you stopped waiting for someone else to tell you that you're enough?